Raise taxes to save the economy and crash it in the process? Sounds crazy, right? But that's the gamble Donald Trump is about to take, with a sweeping 20% global tariff on everything America imports. Forget social media rants or campaign rallies, this is a real economic shockwave. And it's not just bold, it's dangerous. Economists are calling it a reboot of the infamous Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, the same one that helped tank the US economy during the Great Depression. Wall Street didn't wait around. The moment this plan hit the headlines, the Dow, S&P 500, and Nasdaq all dropped like a rock. Moody's chief economist Mark Zandi summed it up in one brutal line: there's no good case here. Just dark variations on a dark theme. If this gets implemented, buckle up. Unemployment could spike from 4% to over 7%. That's not a mild slowdown, that's a full-blown recession. And here's the wild part: the economy could tank before the government even collects a single cent in tariff revenue. Why? Because when tariffs raise prices, Americans stop spending. Businesses lose customers. Layoffs happen. And instead of collecting more tax revenue, the government ends up paying out more for unemployment, food assistance, housing aid, and bailouts for struggling industries. It's a domino effect. And those dominoes are falling fast. But this isn't just a US problem anymore. Our closest neighbors, Mexico and Canada, aren't just watching. They're fighting back. Mexico's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, didn't go on the attack. She went smart. Calm, measured strategy. No shouting matches, just quiet, calculated pressure. She didn't just rally her own people, she went straight to American business leaders. Car manufacturers. Farmers. Energy producers. She got them to sound the alarm in Washington: if tariffs go through, it's Americans who'll get hurt the most. And guess what? It worked. The White House quietly delayed the tariffs. A sign that even Trump knew this wasn't a hill to die on, at least not yet. But Mexico isn't sitting back. They're preparing countermeasures, retaliatory tariffs, tighter border controls, and even threats to renegotiate the USMCA trade deal. They're playing chess, not checkers, and they're doing it with calm confidence. So now the question is this all part of a master plan to boost American power? Or are we walking blindfolded into a recession wearing a "Made in America" hat? One thing's for sure, the global economy is watching. And the stakes couldn't be higher. In late 2024, a significant shift occurred in global finance as several major countries began to reduce their holdings in US Treasury bonds. Among these countries were Japan, the UK, Saudi Arabia, and India, all of which took steps to decrease their reliance on the US dollar and increase their gold reserves. This shift is part of a broader strategy to diversify away from the US dollar due to concerns over its weakening purchasing power, inflation in the United States, and the economic uncertainty caused by global events such as the COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. These factors have raised doubts about the long-term stability of the US dollar as the world's primary reserve currency. For many decades, the US dollar has been the cornerstone of the global financial system. It has been the currency of choice for international trade, and most countries have kept significant reserves in US Treasury bonds as a means of stabilizing their economies. However, the growing concern about inflation and the increasing national debt in the United States have prompted countries to reevaluate their reliance on the dollar. These nations, including China, Russia, and India, are exploring alternative currencies and financial systems to reduce their exposure to the fluctuations of the US economy. Gold, once considered the ultimate store of value, is once again becoming a preferred asset for central banks and investors seeking to hedge against inflation. Countries that were once heavily invested in US treasuries are now shifting their focus to gold. This trend is being driven by fears that inflation in the US could erode the value of the dollar, making it less reliable as a store of wealth. Gold, by contrast, is seen as a more stable asset that can retain its value over time, making it an attractive option for countries looking to safeguard their financial stability. At the same time, there is a growing movement among certain countries to settle trade in their own currencies, bypassing the US dollar altogether. China and Russia, for example, have long sought to promote their own currencies, the yuan and the ruble, in international trade. In recent years, China has made significant strides in this regard, particularly in the energy sector. Countries like Iran and India have begun using the Indian rupee to settle energy deals, further reducing their dependence on the dollar. This shift away from the dollar is part of a broader effort by these countries to establish a more multipolar financial system, one where the US dollar no longer holds the same dominant position. One of the most significant developments in this movement is the creation of alternative financial systems. China and Russia have developed their own payment networks, SPFS and CIPS, respectively, that allow them to bypass the US-controlled SWIFT system. These systems enable countries to conduct international transactions without relying on the US-dominated global financial infrastructure. This development is part of a broader push by countries like China and Russia to reduce their vulnerability to US sanctions and to create a more independent financial system. In addition to these efforts, the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are actively discussing the creation of a new reserve currency to challenge the US dollar's role in global trade. This new currency, still in the planning stages, would be backed by a basket of commodities, including gold, and would be used in trade between BRICS nations. The goal is to reduce the reliance on the US dollar and to create a more equitable global financial system that is less subject to the whims of US economic policy. As these developments unfold, it is clear that the global financial system is undergoing a fundamental transformation. The US dollar, which has been the dominant reserve currency for decades, is facing increasing competition from other currencies and financial systems. The move away from the dollar reflects a broader shift in global power dynamics, as countries seek to assert more control over their economies and reduce their dependence on the United States. While the dollar will likely remain an important global currency for the foreseeable future, the rise of alternative financial systems and currencies marks the beginning of a new era in global finance.